She signed 6 simple words. I am alone. Can I join you? When a deaf woman approached a grieving single father in a coffee shop, she expected rejection. But his response turned her world upside down. Quick pause before the story unfolds. Drop your location in the comments. We absolutely love seeing how far these messages reach across the globe. Bennett Hayes was parked in the back corner of Patty's Café on Southeast Morrison Street in Portland. It was a crisp Saturday afternoon in late September, and he had been staring blankly at the same inventory spreadsheet for 45 minutes, basically play-acting at being productive. He nursed a cup of coffee that had gone stone cold and tasted a lot like regret. All around him, couples were holding hands and groups of friends were bursting into laughter. It made him question when exactly his life had become this hollow routine of avoiding his own front door on weekends. Here is the brutal truth about losing your spouse. After the first year, the check-ins stop. Everyone assumes you have moved on. They buy into the lie. Oi, this time he'll heal all wounds. They do not get it. Year 2 is actually harder than year 1. The initial shock fades, the numbness wears off, and you are left with the wreckage. You have to face the cold, hard reality that the person who anchored your existence is gone forever. Yet somehow, you are still expected to wake up and function. Rachel was taken 2 years ago on October 3rd. A car crash. Instantaneous. Bennett never even got a chance to say goodbye. One ring, one voice from a hospital, and the earth stopped spinning. Now, he haunts this cafe every Saturday from 2 in the afternoon until the lights go out. It is the only place he can go while his 7-year-old Stella visits her grandmother. Because sitting alone in that silent house, it feels like suffocating. Bennett owns a little indie bookstore 3 blocks over called Chapter and Verse. It was Rachel's dream, really. She helped him launch it 6 years ago, back when they were young, naive, and convinced that love was a solid strategy for a business plan. Miraculously, the doors are still open. Bennett barely remembers to restock the shelves or pay the bills on time, but he keeps going. Stella is the only reason his feet hit the floor in the morning. His brilliant, hilarious 7-year-old girl. Stella was born profoundly deaf and speaks fluent American Sign Language. Since Rachel was a speech therapist focused on deaf education, their home had always been a bilingual sanctuary of spoken English and signing. Seeing Stella navigate the world without her mother has been the most agonizing part of Bennett's life. It cuts deeper than his own grief. At least he had 29 years of hearing "I love you" spoken out loud. Stella barely recalls the feeling of Rachel's hand signing "good night" or the gentle shake of her shoulder to wake her for school. Bennett was just about to shove his laptop into his bag and brave the empty house when he spotted a woman. She was standing 10 feet away, clutching a coffee cup. The look on her face stopped him cold. He recognized it instantly because he saw the exact same expression in the mirror every morning. It was raw, unfiltered loneliness, mixed with that bone-deep exhaustion you get from faking happiness when you are actually falling apart. She wore an oversized cardigan and jeans, her dark curls wrestled into a messy bun. Right beside her, sitting statue still, was a golden retriever wearing a vest emblazoned with the words, "Hearing Dog." She scanned the room. The place was slammed for a Saturday afternoon. Every seat was taken, filled with chatter and noise. Bennett watched her inhale deeply, visibly steeling herself for what came next. She made a beeline for his table. Bennett quickly looked down at his screen, assuming she just wanted to ask if she could steal the spare chair for someone else. She did not take the chair. Instead, she set her coffee down right across from him. Her hands rose, moving with deliberate clarity. She signed, "I am alone. Can I join you?" Her face was a mix of vulnerability and terrified hope. She clearly expected him to say no, or worse, to give her that awkward, confused smile hearing people give when they have no idea what is going on. It took Bennett's brain a split second to catch up. Then instinct took over. He did not even have to think. 7 years of muscle memory from talking to Stella kicked in. He raised his hands and signed back, "Of course. Please sit." "I am alone too." The transformation on her face was instant. Her jaw dropped. She was so stunned she nearly tipped over her latte, collapsing into the chair as if her knees had suddenly liquefied. Her hands trembled as she signed, "You know ASL? You can sign?" Bennett nodded and responded in fluid motion. "My daughter is deaf. She is 7. My late wife was a speech therapist specializing in deaf education. Signing is practically our first language at home." The woman pressed both hands to her mouth, eyes welling up with tears. She signed back, I just moved to Portland a month ago for work. I've been a regular here for a month, and honestly, you are the first soul to actually reply to me in sign. Most people act like I'm invisible, or worse. They start shouting and over-enunciating like I'm slow-witted, not just unable to hear. Bennett's chest constricted. He had watched that exact scene play out countless times with Stella, strangers treating her like damaged goods simply because her ears didn't work. His hands moved fluently. Name's Bennett Hayes. I claim this table every Saturday without fail. Consider it yours whenever you like. No one should have to dine solo. She brushed a tear away and responded, I am Ivy Castagnano. I do graphic design remotely. Honestly, my dog Murray is usually the only face I see all day. And seriously, thanks for not looking at me like I'm crazy for crashing a stranger's table. That kicked off a 2-hour conversation, or rather, a signing marathon. Bennett totally lost track of time, ignoring his stone-cold coffee and the inventory list he needed to tackle. He even forgot he was meant to be sitting there mourning, captivated by Ivy's sharp wit and the way her eyes lit up whenever she touched on a topic she loved, whether it was design theory, her pup, or the ache of losing her folks in a plane crash 5 years back. She shared her own story, explaining how a severe bout of meningitis took her hearing when she was just 4. Raised in California, she had relocated to Portland recently. Since she could freelance from anywhere, she decided to chase a clean slate in a city where she was a total unknown. In return, Bennett opened up about the bookstore and Stella, describing how his little girl was the sole deaf student at her public school, and how she would drag herself through the front door every afternoon, completely drained from navigating a hearing world that refused to accommodate her. Worse, she had never actually met a deaf adult outside of their immediate relatives. It terrified Bennett. He feared she was internalizing the idea that deafness equaled eternal solitude. Ivy's signing became rapid and emphatic. Representation isn't just nice, it is vital. I went 16 years before meeting a happy, successful deaf person. That moment shifted my entire universe because, for the first time, I could actually envision a future. Your daughter needs that blueprint. She needs proof that we can thrive, not merely survive. Something dormant deep within Bennett's chest, locked away for 2 years, suddenly cracked open. A spark of hope ignited. Perhaps his daughter's struggle wasn't endless. Perhaps bumping into Ivy wasn't an accident, but exactly what Stella required. He hesitated, then signed. There is a fall carnival at her school next Saturday. I know this sounds insane since we have known each other for all of 2 hours, but would you consider coming? Totally fine, if that is a cross saying it is just meeting you would change her world. Ivy's eyes widened. You are inviting me into your daughter's life after knowing me for 120 minutes? Bennett didn't flinch. You are the first person in 2 years to make me feel less isolated. And Stella needs a living example that deafness isn't a ceiling. So yes, it is fast, but my gut says you are the missing piece we need. Tears spilled down Ivy's cheeks. I would be honored to meet Stella, she signed. Thank you for trusting me with something so precious. And thank you, Bennett replied, for the bravery it took to respond. You can't imagine what this chat has done for me. He continued, walking up to a total stranger and asking for a seat? That takes guts. Ivy laughed, her hands moving quickly. I almost bailed 3 seconds before I did it. I stood there psyching myself up for 5 solid minutes. They swapped numbers and finalized the details for the upcoming weekend. When Ivy finally walked out with Murray at her heel, Bennett remained frozen for 10 minutes. He stared at the new contact, saved simply as Ivy ASL, needing proof that she hadn't been a hallucination. He drove back that evening, and for the first time in 2 years, the silence of the house didn't feel like it was crushing him. With trembling fingers, he pulled out his phone and messaged Rachel's mother. I think I met someone today. Not sure what it means, but I felt a spark I haven't felt since we lost Rachel. Is it wrong for me to feel this way? The reply came within 30 seconds. Rachel would want you to live, sweetheart. Tell me everything. Bennett typed rapidly. She is deaf. She approached me at the café in Sign, and I really think Stella needs to know her. He pressed send, sinking into the couch. The quiet house remained, but the thought lingered that maybe, just maybe, the loneliness was starting to recede. It was a thought that terrified him as much as it healed him. The next Saturday, Bennett arrived at the school carnival. Stella was practically buzzing with energy. He had told her that morning about the surprise guest, and the moment he raised his hands to sign, she shares your world, and she's dying to meet you." The radiance that washed over Stella's face was a ghost Bennett hadn't glimpsed since the days before Rachel passed. The school carnival was a chaotic swirl of inflatable castles, sticky face paint, and bake sale tables manned by PTA moms vibrating with intensity. Bennett stood back, observing his daughter scan the clusters of shrieking children darting past her, while she remained anchored to a playground bench, folding inward to take up as little space as possible. Her silent retreat from a world that didn't know how to speak her language. It felt like his chest was being ripped open, watching his 7-year-old pluck aimlessly at blades of grass, her hopeful eyes darting up every few moments, praying for an invitation that never came. Just as he prepared to bridge the gap and comfort her, Ivy appeared, striding, across the green with Murray, her golden retriever service dog, trotting in perfect rhythm at her heel. She caught Bennett's eye and offered a friendly wave. The moment Stella clocked the woman signing from 20 feet out, she froze, her entire posture stiffening with electric focus. In a heartbeat, she launched herself across the lawn, moving with a speed that left Bennett flat-footed. She braked hard in front of the stranger, her small hands flying in a blur of motion. "You're signing! You actually know ASL! Are you deaf? Like, actually deaf like me?" Ivy immediately dropped to one knee, meeting Stella gaze for gaze, and signed back with a smile that could melt glaciers. "Hey there, Stella. I'm Ivy. And you bet I am. My ears stopped working when I was 4 years old, just like yours. We are two of a kind." Stella's jaw practically hit the grass. She whipped her head toward Bennett, eyes wide as saucers, her fingers trembling. "Dad, she's an adult, and she's deaf." "I didn't know we were allowed to grow up. I thought I was the only one in the entire universe." The air left Bennett's lungs as if he'd been gut-punched. How had he let her believe she was solitary in her existence? The realization that she thought her deafness was a terminal sentence to a lonely childhood forced him to turn away and compose his features. By the time he faced them again, Stella had seized Ivy's hand and was hauling her toward the inflatables, firing off roughly 17 questions, in rapid succession, interrogating her about school, beloved books, Murray's trick repertoire, and whether being deaf stopped Ivy from driving, working, or being like the other moms. Ivy fielded every rapid-fire inquiry with grace and energy, explaining her career in graphic design, describing her apartment, her car, and emphasizing that her hearing loss hadn't put a single dent in her dreams. Bennett stood by, witnessing his daughter absorb every gesture like a traveler wandering a desert who had finally stumbled upon a spring. Slowly, other children drifted closer, drawn in by the magnetic pull of a fluffy golden retriever begging for pets. Ivy showed them signs for hello, thank you, and friend, while Stella stood tall beside her, beaming with pride to finally be the authority in the room rather than the girl who needed special help. 2 hours deep into the event, Bennett found himself leaning against the lemonade stall, watching the pair tackle a beanbag toss. Stella was erupting with a deep, belly-shaking laughter that had been absent from their home for far too long. A tidal wave of thankfulness crashed over him, mingled with a spark of emotion he wasn't brave enough to label yet. Ivy looked up, catching his gaze, and signed from across the grass. "Your girl is absolutely amazing." Bennett raised his hands to reply. "So are you." The glance they exchanged tightened the air in his lungs. As the festivities wrapped up, they strolled to the parking lot, Stella swinging like a pendulum between their hands, vibrating with stories of the day. She looked up at Ivy, fingers pleading. "Dinner at our place? Please? Please, 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 I need to show you my books and my room. Dad burns everything, but we can just order pizza." Ivy chuckled, glancing at Bennett's panic-stricken face, and threw him a lifeline. "How about this? I visit once a week for a sign language lesson. Does Wednesday work for you two?" Stella practically launched herself into orbit with joy, while Bennett silently mouthed, "Thank you." He knew she caught it perfectly. That night, after Stella finally crashed around 9, too buzzed on happiness to sleep any earlier, Bennett sat on the edge of his mattress, locking eyes with Rachel's photograph, which hadn't moved an inch in 2 years. He lifted the frame, speaking into the silence, ignoring how foolish he felt. "I really like her, Rach. It's not just how she is with Stella. It's, when she's near, the air gets lighter. I can actually breathe. And the guilt is eating me alive. It's only been 2 years. Do I even have the right to feel this way about someone else already?" The phone on the nightstand vibrated, lighting up with a message from Ivy. "Thanks for today. Stella is a gem, and you are doing a phenomenal job raising her solo." Bennett stared at the screen for a solid 10 minutes, his fingers hovering, before he could summon the motor control to reply. Finally, he typed, "Thank you for giving her the one thing I couldn't. I've never seen her glow with such confidence. You unlocked a spark in her today." Ivy didn't hesitate to reply. "That fire comes from observing you. It's obvious. Catch you on Wednesday." Bennett set the mobile aside and his gaze drifted to Rachel's framed portrait. With a heavy sigh, he tipped the frame onto the nightstand, unable to meet his late wife's eyes while his mind was filled with thoughts of another woman. It felt like he was committing high treason against his own heart. Over the next 6 weeks, Wednesday night solidified into a cherished ritual. Ivy would arrive promptly at 6:30, armed with sweet treats and fresh vocabulary. She brought stacks of literature on deaf heritage and introduced Stella to online clips of deaf creators, Olympians, and innovators breaking barriers. Bennett watched his daughter blossom in real time. She launched a signing group on campus and bonded with 2 classmates eager to master American Sign Language. She returned each afternoon radiating excitement, no longer drained from forcing herself into a hearing world that refused to accommodate her. By the end of October, the air had turned crisp. One Wednesday, after tucking Stella in, Bennett and Ivy lingered on the sofa, their tea growing lukewarm as conversation flowed. They chatted about trivialities until the mood shifted. Ivy's movements slowed as she signed, "May I cross a line and ask a personal question?" Bennett didn't blink, his hands forming the reply. "With you, nothing is off limits." She inhaled unsteadily. "Does joy ever make you feel ashamed? As if healing proves you didn't love the one you lost deeply enough." Bennett's hand suspended in space. He held her gaze for a long beat before signing, "Constantly, every waking hour. So you understand." Ivy nodded solemnly. "When I lost my folks, I walked around hollowed out for nearly 3 years. Then I caught myself chuckling at a joke, and instant self-hatred washed over me. It felt like a violation of their memory to enjoy a single second of life." Without conscious intent, Bennett slid nearer to her on the cushions and raised his hands. "That mirrors my existence with Rachel, but your presence is waking something up inside me. It's scary. What if I haven't earned the right to smile yet? What if 2 years is too soon?" Tears welled in Ivy's gaze. "Describe what you feel when we're together." Bennett's fingers trembled as he shaped his answer. "It's like emerging from a 2-year coma. The world is suddenly vibrant again, no longer just shades of slate and charcoal. It feels like I have permission to exist as a man rather than just a father or a grieving widower." The distance between them had vanished. He could trace the gold flecks in her brown irises. She signed softly, "That isn't a crime." "Coming back to life." Bennett countered, "To me, it feels like infidelity." Yet gravity pulled them together. His logic screamed warnings, but his chest ached with a magnetic pull he couldn't resist. Just as their breath mingled, Bennett recoiled violently, nearly tumbling to the floor. His hands flew up in a chaotic flurry. "I can't do this." "I'm unprepared. Forgive me, Ivy." She responded instantly, her motion soothing. "No apologies needed. We set the pace. I'm staying right here. You have my word." Bennett buried his face in his palms while Ivy traced calming circles on his spine until his gasp subsided. Eventually raising his head, he signed, "You merit a man who isn't shattered into pieces." Ivy corrected him gently. "You aren't shattered, you're mending. Distinguish between the two." The fragile piece shattered on November 2nd. Rachel's mother appeared on Bennett's doorstep, unannounced and uninvited. She marched into the kitchen, her eyes immediately locking onto the refrigerator. It was covered in snapshots, candid moments from their weekly dinners and a goofy group selfie taken by Stella. Linda, his mother-in-law, jabbed a finger toward the prince. "Identify this woman. My granddaughter won't stop mentioning her. It's always Ivy said, or Ivy did. What is her relation to you?" Bennett's hackles rose instantly. "She's a family friend. She is deaf and has been guiding Stella. The impact has been overwhelmingly positive." Linda's expression hardened into a frost that made Bennett feel like a reprimanded schoolboy. "You're substituting my daughter with the first deaf person you stumbled across. You're outsourcing the raising of my granddaughter because you're too lazy to do it alone." Bennett snapped back, his tone cutting. "I am not replacing a single soul. Stella required a mentor who shares her experience, and Ivy is a godsend. Rachel would have supported this." Linda snatched her bag and stormed toward the exit. Rachel was magnificent. She mastered a foreign tongue for that child. Do not dare overwrite her legacy. She slammed the door before he could retort, leaving him standing by the counter, feeling as though a freight train had collided with his chest. His fingers trembled uncontrollably as he dialed Ivy later that evening. He requested she stay away for the foreseeable future, claiming he needed distance to sort through his head. Ivy's voice crackled through the line, small and wounded. "Did I mess up?" Bennett choked out. "No, heaven forbid, no. The fault is entirely mine. I just need a moment." After ending the call, he collapsed onto the linoleum and wept for the first time in seasons. 2 weeks dragged by in Ivy's absence. Stella was despondent, her hands flying at Bennett with the same question every dawn. "How come Ivy stopped coming over? Did I mess up? Is she angry with me?" Bennett forced a smile and lied, signing, "She is just swamped at the office right now, sweetheart." Stella stared right through him and signed, "That is a lie. It is written all over your face. You drove her away, right? You got frightened and bolted, just like usual." Bennett stood there, absolutely stunned that his 7-year-old daughter could read his soul so easily. On November 18th, while her dad was taking a shower, Stella swiped his smartphone from the bathroom vanity and scrolled until she hit Ivy's name, typing out, "Please come over for Thanksgiving dinner. We need you here at 2 o'clock Thursday," she added, signing it as her father. Ivy replied almost instantly, "You are certain about this, Bennett? I would hate to crash if you are not up for it." Stella, continuing the charade, fired back, "Positive! Please show up. I miss you." Ivy replied with a heart symbol and promised she would be there. Stella erased the chat history, returned the device to its exact spot, and grinned, knowing she had just solved her father's problem. When Thanksgiving rolled around, Bennett was in the kitchen at 1:45 in the afternoon. He was scorching the bird and ruining the mashed potatoes, while Stella quietly arranged plates for 2 people. He was so busy trying to save the meal that he missed the mischievous smirk playing on his daughter's lips, like she held a secret card. Then the strobes flashed, their visual doorbell system signaling a visitor, and Stella bolted for the entrance before Bennett could even set down his potato masher. By the time he reached the front hall, Stella had already flung the door wide open. There stood Ivy on the porch, clutching a homemade pumpkin pie, with Murray sitting obediently beside her in his service gear. She looked just as baffled as Bennett felt, eyeing his flower-covered shirt with confusion. Bennett's hands flew up automatically, signing, "Why are you here?" Ivy signed back, clearly puzzled. "You messaged me 3 days ago inviting me. You specifically said 2 o'clock. Bennett whipped out his phone and checked his chat history, but it was empty. No messages for a fortnight. He spun around to face Stella, who was attempting to look innocent and failing hard. She signed without an ounce of regret. "Oops, my bad. I stole your phone because you were being a coward. Mom would be furious that you are chasing away someone who brings you joy." Bennett signed emphatically, "Stella Marie Hayes." "What are the rules about touching my device?" Stella just folded her arms and retorted, "That sometimes 7-year-olds know better than their fathers, and you ought to listen to me. Now ask her inside before she takes off and you ruin this even more than you already have." Bennett looked at Ivy shivering in the cold with her pie, looking ready to run. He signed, "I am terribly sorry. I didn't know she pulled this stunt. You do not need to stay if you are uncomfortable." But Ivy replied, "It is Thanksgiving, and my plan was a frozen pizza alone. So, unless you are physically throwing me out, I want to be here." Stella seized Ivy's hand and dragged her into the warmth before Bennett could say another word. Suddenly, she was in the kitchen helping salvage the meal while Stella played in the living room, giving them privacy. Bennett's hands trembled as he signed, "I owe you a huge apology for my behavior lately. My mother-in-law got into my head and made me second-guess us. Instead of communicating, I just withdrew." Ivy put down the vegetable knife and signed, "What exactly did she tell you?" Bennett inhaled deeply before responding. "She claimed I was replacing Rachel, using you to raise Stella to make my life easier, and that 2 years is not long enough to heal." Ivy's expression hardened, her signing becoming sharp. "First, I would never attempt to take Rachel's place, and you know it. Second, Stella needed a mentor from the deaf community, not a replacement mother. And third, grief has no schedule. You do not have to heal on someone else's clock." Tears welled in Bennett's eyes. "I feel so guilty whenever I am happy with you, like moving on means I didn't love her enough." Ivy stepped closer. "Did Rachel love you?" Bennett nodded. Ivy continued, "Then she would want you to thrive, not just exist. That is what love means." The dinner turned out chaotic, but perfect. The bird was dry and the mash was lumpy, but it didn't matter. Stella chatted endlessly. Ivy laughed at Bennett's culinary disasters, and Murray begged for treats under the table. Once Stella, with the little one tucked in around 8, completely drained from the day's thrill, Bennett and Ivy settled onto the front porch, bundled in quilts as they gazed at the glowing windows of the neighborhood. In the quiet, Bennett's hands began to form the words he had been too petrified to vocalize. "I am losing my heart to you," he signed, "and it terrifies me to my core. I have already buried one great love. I am not sure I could survive that kind of wreckage twice." Ivy shifted to look him in the eye and responded with her hands. "You could lose me, and I could lose you. That is the gamble we take when we choose to care. But, Bennett, I have spent 5 years in solitude since my folks passed, and I would choose the chance of a broken heart over the certainty of a lonely life." Bennett leaned in and kissed her right there on the steps, a gentle, tentative moment, heavy with 2 years of sorrow finally shifting to make space for a new beginning. When he pulled away, his hands moved again. "I need to do this properly. We have to take it slow, for Stella. Will you wait for me?" Ivy's reply was instant. "I have waited a lifetime already. I am not going anywhere." Fast forward 6 months to May, and life had transformed completely. Ivy was now woven into the fabric of their daily routine, dropping by 5 times every week. Stella never called her mom. No one wanted to replace Rachel, but she said Ivy with a warmth that proved she was family. Even the bookstore was thriving like never before, thanks to Ivy's graphic design wizardry giving the website and logo a much-needed facelift. They had also launched a monthly gathering for the local deaf community right there in the shop, giving Stella a chance to finally connect with kids her age who could sign just as fluently as she did. One Sunday morning found the trio at Patty's Café, tucked into their regular booth, the very same corner where Bennett and Ivy first crossed paths 9 months prior. Patty bustled over with steaming mugs of cocoa and beamed. "You three look like a proper little family unit. It warms my soul seeing you all huddled up like this." Stella's hands flashed a message to the adults. "We are a family. It is just a different shape than before. And that is fine. Mom would want us to find joy." Bennett had to duck into the restroom to compose himself, overwhelmed that his 7-year-old possessed a wisdom that far outstripped most grown-ups. When September 28th arrived, marking exactly 1 year since they met, Bennett announced he had a surprise destination in mind but kept his lips sealed on the details. As they parked in front of Patty's Cafe on a mundane Wednesday afternoon, Ivy looked confused. "Why bring us here today? Sundays are our tradition." Ignoring the question, Bennett gently grabbed her hand and guided her straight to their usual nook. It was the precise location where she had approached him a year back, asking to share his table. They settled in and requested 2 coffees. Ivy glanced around the room, eyes wide, clearly expecting some sort of context. Bennett lifted his hands, movements deliberate. "1 year ago to the day, you came to this table. I was sitting here alone, drowning in self-pity, and you signed 5 words that altered the course of my existence. You simply asked if you could sit with me." Tears welled in Ivy's eyes instantly. Bennett slid from the booth, dropping to one knee in the center of the shop. Retrieving a ring, he signed with one hand, "No more being alone. I am done with solitude." "Ivy, will you be my wife?" Ivy broke down completely, sobbing as she nodded vigorously, her hands frantically signing yes over and over again. The whole room burst into cheers, and Patty rushed over, tears streaming down her face, to wrap them both in a crushing bear hug. By the following spring, they exchanged vows at the Botanical Gardens. Stella stood proud as a junior bridesmaid, and Murray served as ring-bearer, the bands secured safely to his little vest. The whole service took place in ASL, with a voice interpreter bridging the gap for the hearing attendees. In front of the crowd, Bennett signed his promise. "You showed me that loving you does not delete the love I have for Rachel. It simply means my heart expanded to hold you both. You allowed me to truly live again." Ivy followed with her vows. "You saw me when I felt like a ghost. You gifted me a family when I was sure I would remain solitary forever. I vow to love you and Stella with every fiber of my being." 2 years post-wedding, on an ordinary Tuesday evening, Bennett, Ivy, and an 11-year-old Stella were locking up the shop. Ivy had begun running ASL workshops twice a week, helping hearing parents communicate with their deaf children. The network they had cultivated was absolutely flourishing. As they strolled toward the parking lot, a young woman, likely around 19 or 20 and clearly deaf, flagged Ivy down. Her key hands trembled slightly as she signed, Pardon me, I hate to intrude, but I only arrived in Portland 2 weeks ago. I don't know a soul, and the loneliness is overwhelming. I noticed you signing and just needed to connect with someone who gets it. Ivy's expression brightened with empathy. I know that feeling all too well, she signed back. I came here 3 years ago and felt exactly the same. We are actually heading to get some food right now. Would you care to come along? The stranger's face shifted from despair to hope in a heartbeat. Bennett stood by, watching his wife extend the very same grace she had received 3 years prior, back when she asked a stranger in a coffee shop if she could take a seat. Occasionally, the most courageous act is admitting your isolation and asking to be let in. All it took was Ivy walking up to a stranger and signing 5 little words. That single exchange rewrote the destiny of 3 separate lives. Bennett discovered that you don't have to bury the past just to build a future. The ultimate way to pay tribute to those we miss is by daring to live vibrantly and love without reservation. As for Stella, she finally accepted that standing out doesn't mean you are defective. It simply means you are existing exactly as you were designed to. And honestly, this world is plenty big enough to make room for every single one of us. If this journey touched your heart, if it reminded you that vulnerability takes guts and that we all just crave to be truly seen, please go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Pass this along to anyone who is terrified of opening up, scared of second chances, or convinced they are too scarred to be cherished. Remind them that solitude is an illusion. We are all in this together. We just need to summon the courage to reach out a hand. I appreciate you spending this time right here with us.